From Fox 8 Sports, this is the Overtime Podcast.
From the Fox 8 Studios in New Orleans, this is the Fox 8 Overtime Podcast. I'm Vasilios. That is Sean Fazende. Remember to like, subscribe, rate, and review. You guys can find us wherever you listen to and watch your podcast. And if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you hit that little bell notification button. You get an update every time we upload a new podcast. Sean, we are in the bye week. Happy Wednesday to you. And we have a fun show on.
We do have a fun show here today, but like Sil said, be sure to like, share, rate, review, wherever you get your podcast audio version, wherever you get your podcast video version on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe to the YouTube content. Leave those comments. I know you guys have left a lot of them over the last couple episodes, and I am pretty sure you're going to leave a few here today based off of our discussions, which is sure to elicit a response from those that like to respond to our videos. By the way, we love the responses. Even if you wholeheartedly disagree, keep them coming because we like the banter back and forth. If you noticed, we comment on a lot of, or we reply to a lot of the comments you guys leave us. So keep them coming, keep them coming, keep them coming. So, as we always do, Sil, how do we normally start a podcast?
Big picture. So, Derek Carr.
That's it.
We're talking about Derek Carr right now. Through 10 games, Sean, big picture on how his tenure as a New Orleans Saint has gotten off to.
Okay, look, I wasn't going to go here because we've talked, he's a quarterback. He's a big money quarterback. We've talked about him a lot. We have talked about him a lot, and we will continue to do so because of that reason. I wasn't going to go here today until the news of Deshaun Watson's season-ending shoulder injury came across and broke today. So it just got me. You can't ignore that. You can't ignore that, especially us who talk about the big picture a lot. Because at one point, the big picture for this franchise was we are all in on Deshaun Watson. This close. This close. I remember the text chain I was on, the constant back and forth with updates.
I remember that night.
And it was like, I don't know how to go. I don't know what to do because I'm getting reports that it's happening. It's a done deal. It's a done deal. And then it cooled, and then it came back, and then it cooled again. And out of nowhere, he signs with the Cleveland Browns. We know that. The Saints were willing to put well over $200 million, trade for, give up all the assets for Deshaun Watson, given his situation in Houston. Cleveland beat him out, got that ridiculous contract. I don't know if the Saints would have done it. Well, I know they wouldn't have done what the Cleveland Browns did because they didn't sign him. So clearly the Saints wouldn't have done exactly what the Browns had done, but they were in the ballpark. They were in the ballpark. So why am I even bringing this up? Well, because, and be ready with your comments because I know they're coming. We are no longer going to have the should the Saints bench Derek Carr discussion. It's not happening. It's not happening. Okay? And nor should it. I want to make sure I say that too because that's sure to elicit the comments as well. I'm sure there's a segment or a portion of the fan base that want to see it happen. But after 10 games, I don't believe it should. Business-wise and football-wise. But for these purposes, we're going to talk business because they were all in on Deshaun Watson. All in on Deshaun Watson. It didn't happen. They had to run it back with Jameis and Andy Dalton. And we know how 2022 went. We know how it went. Excuse me, let me get this real quick.
No, you're good.
Yeah, we know how it went. So they make the 1 year later, they go back and they make the big investment. This time they hone in on Derek Carr, who had a connection with Dennis Allen. Dennis Allen drafted him. They go all in, sign him for when you look at Deshaun Watson's contract based off of what Derek Carr signed for, a much more reasonable contract. As we've mentioned many times, 13th highest paid quarterback in the NFL. But the bottom line is this, Sil. There isn't a single topic being discussed more on the outside that isn't even being touched on the inside. It's not even close to happening. So Carr is not going to get benched. We all know that. It's been stated time and time again. So we're not even going to elaborate we're not even going to go in on whether or not he should or he shouldn't. What we're going to do today is fairly and honestly evaluate how he's been through 10 games. There's more to this, though. You recall from Deshaun Watson, from the last offseason to this offseason, you had Russell Wilson sign the big deal.
Mm-hmm.
You had Aaron Rodgers sign the big deal. You had Deshaun Watson sign the big deal. Big, high-end quarterbacks going to a new team. Wilson certainly didn't have a good first year. They didn't give up on their investment. Deshaun Watson only played in 6 games his first year. The Browns certainly weren't going to give up on that investment. They're still not. Mm-hmm. And I can promise you, after, 3 snaps, the Jets aren't giving up on their investment in Aaron Rodgers. Bottom line, the Saints aren't giving up on their investment with Derek Carr through 10 games. So that's why we're closing the book on that discussion. Mm-hmm. And from here on out, it's going to be a purely football discussion when it comes to Derek Carr, because this is where I am in agreement with some of you that he can be better. He has been, what's the word I used when I called him? What did I use last week? And you and I debated the word.
Average.
Average. He's been average. What if I told you every single stat backs that up? Every single major stat backs it up. I got it right here. Check out. This is what we we got the notepad here. This is where we jot some stuff down. So I'm going to go ahead and go with it here. In yards, 2,231 yards, 12th in the NFL. Completion percentage, 65.9, 16th in the NFL. That goes to show you how much the NFL has changed, because at one point, 65% was the gold standard of completion percentage. 16th in the NFL. Now, there's a difference between the QBR and the rating. Rating, he's at 89.8, 17th in the NFL. QBR, 50.8, 20th in the NFL. Touchdowns thrown, 10, 19th in the NFL. And interceptions thrown, this is where he's in the top tier with 4. He's tied for second for a guy with that many starts. So I've watched Derek Carr probably more than any other player on the Saints roster. He's a quarterback. It's what we do. He's had his ups. He's had his downs. Mm-hmm. He's had his moments. He's had his inconsistencies. He is the guy whose stats match that of a, wait for it, 5-5 team. He fits right in with the whole sort of theme and vibe of the Saints right now. Not bad, but not good. Average, mediocre, whatever, middle of the pack, middle of the road, whatever you want to call it. That's where they stand, and that's been Derek Carr through 10 games. You have a big enough sample size to confidently say that. The question is, can it get better on the backstretch? For the backstretch, I don't know. Because it certainly feels like every time they get a little bit of a roll, like they did against Indianapolis and then Chicago, they stubbed their toe. In Minnesota, they look bad. They definitely took a step back offensively. Mm-hmm. So I don't know, because it has been kind of a bumpy road here throughout. And the first 4 or 5 games of the season, there were some offensive line issues, there were some chemistry issues, new quarterback, new receivers, getting on the same page, terminology, all that stuff, and they were able to somewhat manage that with wins and losses. I think they were 3-2 after 5 games. But once you turn that corner after 5 games, you kind of got to be where you're going to be. And they still haven't gotten there, which leads me to believe it's probably going to look a little bit like this the rest of the way. Is that going to be good enough? I think it's going to be good enough to get them to 9-8. That's what I think it's going to be, 9-8. And I think 9-8 wins the NFC South. That's not me being Mr. Positive or being glass half full. That's just me realistically looking at the schedule ahead, who they have, the opponents in front of them, the way they've been. Because, look, when it's bad, when they lose, you hear it. But when it's good, or it has been good in spots, you don't hear quite the same level of praise. Mm. That comes with the territory. We get it. But overall, I just think that's where it's going to end up being. It's going to end up being that somewhere between 12th and 18th ranking going forward, and they'll probably finish with a slightly above 500 record, and I got them at 9-8 winning the NFC South. Your thoughts?
I mean, you pretty much summed up my thoughts right there, and honestly,
but I want you to respond to my feeling that it's time to close the book on the topic of should he be benched, because it's going to pop up every time he has to step off. He gets hurt in the game and someone else has to come in. Yeah. He has a small amount of success like Jameis did, but I really want to get your definitive thoughts on it.
I mean, and look, we had this discussion, and you got the full Jameis experience against the Vikings, where 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions is literally like peak Jameis right there. But Derek Carr is never going to be that guy. He's never going to be the guy that makes the flashy play. He's going to be the guy that makes the right play, or at least we think he's going to, which we haven't gotten to see a lot of that guy this season, and we're hoping to see him in the future. He's the guy the Saints have pointed at and said, you're going to be the guy for this franchise. They gave him a contract that says so. He is, whether we like it or not, he is tethered to Dennis Allen's hip.
That's it.
And he is Dennis Allen's guy. We saw it when Dennis drafted him in 2014, and it's going to be that way until Dennis's tenure is up here as well.
And let me just make this clear as well. Just because he's the starter and the Saints should keep him the starter does not mean he's played fantastic.
No.
Like, please don't get it twisted. Does not mean he's played well.
He's not playing like a bottom 5 quarterback.
He's been average.
Yes.
He's been average. People get in the comments or they want me to say he's trash. He hasn't been trash, but he hasn't been an all-star or an all-pro or a pro bowler. He's been right in the middle. He's been very Derek Carr. Let's be real.
That's the thing with Derek Carr is that he doesn't have the peaks that Jameis has, but he also doesn't have the lows that Jameis has. He is a more consistent quarterback. You know kind of what you're going to get from him. You're going to get that middle of the road.
That's it.
Guy that can lead you to wins, and sometimes he's going to lead you to losses.
And you hope with that middle of the road play, which he has been exactly like his scouting report would suggest. You would hope, and I think the problem has been in the midst of that sort of middle of the road status and play and, good here, bad there, the defense has not been as rock solid as they've been or used to be. And they've hit a slide. Special teams has not been as good as it should be. And that's why when you combine those 3 aspects, you get 5-5. This is what an average team does. This is what an average team looks like. But yet here they are, still with a chance to win the NFC South. Let's move on to a different topic.
All right. So, like I mentioned before, we are in the bye week, Sean. Highs and lows, man.
Yeah, we know that.
Yeah. So, I mean, going in, what do you expect to... What do you expect from this bye week, really?
I expect there to be rest. I hope there's some intense self-scouting from the coaching staff, some intense real and frank discussions on what changes need to be made. If they're going to, we said it a few weeks ago. If there are no tangible changes made, look for 500 play. Boy, has that rung true because there was a moment there where they didn't make any changes and they had a little bit of success and we're kind of like, oh, well, maybe they knew what they were talking about. And now you're back to 500 and you have this is the back turn is here. So I'm very curious to see the tangible change. It doesn't have to be a huge one. Bringing in Jason Pierre-Paul could certainly help. It could be something as simple as making an adjustment in the personnel grouping, making whatever the case may be, a special teams switch, a tweak, secondary, whatever the case may be. Hopefully some guys that are banged up get healthy. Derek Carr is in concussion protocol, but he came battled back from that AC joint sprain, no shoulder stuff here. We'll just see how long it takes him to recover from that concussion. Michael Thomas, the knee, Marshawn Lattimore, the ankle. Those are 2 situations where you just got to heal. Of those 2, Lattimore is the one that concerns me most when it comes to length of time possibly missed. But they have some numbers back there in the secondary. They have Yadam, they have Taylor, they have Adebo. So we'll see how that plays itself out. But really, they got to get their minds and their bodies right and come back with the deliberate focus of a team that has everything in front of them, but knows the slightest slip up can cost them everything. And they've got to be able. They've responded to failure. They've got to be able to handle success if they're going to do anything this season.
I agree. I mean, you just got to take this time. It's been a tumultuous first 10 weeks of the season. You got to take this time to kind of just sit back, reassess, rest a little bit, and look at the rest of the season. What can you do better? Just get your minds right, because God knows the Saints have gone through their fair share of stuff this season.
No doubt. But in saying that, I want to kind of take a little bit of and that's something. I mean, it's crazy how that news cycle works. We'll get to that a little bit later.
Yeah.
I do want to kind of let's examine. We did it with Derek Carr. Let's examine the team though as we sit here at the bye week through 10 games. Again, a significant sample size, a team that we all felt like was good enough to win the NFC South and get back to the postseason. I didn't imagine 5-5 at this point, but they still have a legitimate shot at winning the NFC South. They're still in first place. So let's kind of go through that and see kind of where we feel like this team stands.
All right. So we'll
do some, why don't we go, for instance.
What are you thinking here?
Right now, through 10 games, who is your offensive MVP?
Oh, okay. So we're going here. All right. So offensive MVP, and I kind of alluded to this before we came on air. Mike Thomas.
Okay.
I'm going to say Mike Thomas, and the reason I say that, and not someone who's made more plays, is because the respect that he commands.
No doubt.
Now that he's played, we've seen Mike Thomas playing. He might be hurt right now. We'll see what happens if he's able to play after the bye. But Mike Thomas is my offensive MVP right now. The commanding respects on the field, the willingness the team has had to go to him in tough situations, the catches he's made. He's taken more of a leadership role this season, and he's been the surest set of hands on the team when you need to pick up the yards that are tough to pick up on the football field. So right now for me, that Mike T is that guy.
All right, that's not a bad choice. For me, it's the guy they've leaned on. It's the guy that's bailed them out of some trouble. It's the guy that was somehow, some way not involved much in the parts of the game where he excels last week. I'm going with number 7, Taysom Hill. To me, he's been the most consistent. I think he's delivered in clutch moments. I think he's been fantastic when the bright lights are on. And I think he's a guy, when all else fails, turn to 7. He can help you win a game. I think he's done that. And he's got, 261 yards rushing, 3 touchdowns. 5 of 6 passing, 72 yards and a touchdown. And where he's really improved, in my opinion, is catching the football. 22 receptions, 159 yards, and a touchdown. For me, through 10 games, Taysom Hill is my New Orleans Saints 2023 MVP through 10 games.
All right. And so how about defensive player right now? Sean, I'll let you take the lead on this one.
Well, we're going to go defensive MVP here. I went back and forth. I know he's had his moments of struggle, but I think overall he's been consistent. I'm going to go Demario Davis, 73 tackles, 4 sacks, a forced fumble. He's had his moments of getting caught out of containment or not quite being in position he needs to be. And I don't know if he quite has the sideline range that he once has, but he's consistent. He knows what he's doing, and more often than not, he makes the play. So I'm going to go Demario Davis for a defense that, it would have been hard in a different direction earlier in the season if we had this, because all the players were playing well. But now a lot of players have leveled off, so it makes it even more difficult. So I'm going to say I think Demario Davis has been the guy.
All right, so for me, defensive MVP through 10 games, Carl Granderson.
Okay.
5.5 sacks through the season so far, 10 games. That is the amount that he had last season through a full 16 games. He started all 10 games this season. He was only started 4 last season. He's a guy that's really shaped up, and what did we say at the beginning of the season, Sean? Consistency. That is what he brings to the defense, and in a defensive front that more or less has been a black hole in terms of pass rush recently, he's been the guy that you can kind of point towards that can make a play when it going gets tough.
He would have been my MVP, but I saved him for another category, which we'll get to next. What's the next category?
All right, biggest surprise.
I think we know where we're going here. Carl Granderson is my biggest surprise. He could have been my defensive MVP, but when you talk about the expectations of a player heading into a season and what that player has done throughout the season, to me, he is the one that has surpassed expectations more than any other player on the roster. We talk about Carl Granderson, who he's had to compete with, how he's had to steadily improve, and he just makes play after play after play, never takes a play off, doesn't take his position for granted. A guy that had to do it the hard way, 5.5 sacks, as you mentioned. If you put him as defensive MVP, I thought about it, but then when we had the biggest surprise category, I saved him for this because, as I just mentioned, I don't think anyone saw this coming. I don't think anyone would have said Carl Granderson's been the MVP of the defense before the season. Thought he'd been a solid player. Now he's a guy that's, between the two of us, one of them has an MVP. So that's certainly a big surprise in my opinion. So Carl Granderson, to me, is the biggest surprise.
All right, my biggest surprise, Paulson Adebo.
Okay.
Just when you want to talk about expectations, Paulson Adebo, he came in, had 3 interceptions his first season, none last year, but came in this year and as kind of a reputation for either holding a guy down the field or getting flags for pass interference. This season, he's got 4 INTs, 2 fumble recoveries through 8 games, mind you. He hasn't even played the full 10 slate. And I just think that he has really come into his own. He's surprising me playing opposite of Marshawn Lattimore. And if Marshawn's out for an extended period of time, the spotlight's going to be on him a little more. So he's going to have a little bit more to prove here. But he's really surprised me with how he's played this season. All right, moving on to our biggest disappointment of the 2023 season, Sean.
Biggest disappointment. It's a tag team. It's a tie for me because one is a lack of development, one is a lack of availability, and both are guys the team is heavily invested in. It's the last back-to-back first-round picks in 2021 and 2022. I'm talking about Trevor Penning and Peyton Turner. Trevor Penning's disappointing development at left tackle. He started the season off a certain way, obviously was struggling, and then at some point, never hit his stride consistent enough, so they made the move to bench Trevor Penning. That's a huge disappointment. This is a guy they invested a lot in. He was a former first-round pick. They saw a lot in him to go out and get him. Again, first-round pick, a line of scrimmage for a team that puts more effort into the line of scrimmage when it comes to drafting than any other position. So to have to pull him after 5 games in his first year starting, second year as a pro, when he was finally healthy, is absolutely a huge disappointment. The other one is Peyton Turner because he's just never around. I mean, he's out of sight, out of mind. He's never available. He's never here. He's never, we got that question last week about Peyton Turner. It was like, wow, I had forgotten he was on the roster because you can't control injuries. We know that, but after 3 years, you would hope at some point he would have been able to have gotten that under control. It has not happened. He's consistently unavailable on a team that could use a pass rusher. A team that could use a pass rusher. We just talked about Carl Granderson. That's an undrafted guy that clearly outperformed where he was taken or not taken in the draft, after the draft. You would have loved to have seen that type of development and that type of ceiling and that sort of growth from a guy like Peyton Turner. We'll never know because he's never on the field, and he's been injured once again. The Saints have now, as we talked about earlier, Jason Pierre-Paul's coming back. So, they're trying to find pass rushers, and this guy is just consistently unavailable. To me, that's the biggest disappointment.
Yeah, and my biggest disappointment happens to be the same as one of yours, and Trevor Penning. I don't understand how you are drafted so high. You're kind of heralded as this next great run blocker at left tackle. You are going to be the guy to start at left tackle and be the bookend right with Ryan Ramczyk, and then you just end up missing majority of last season, and then you're benched this season. It didn't work out, and so I don't know if it's something between the ears or if it's just something mechanically. It might be a little bit of both, but the Saints had to do something to get Trevor Penning off the field, and to have to be forced to get a former first-round pick off the field, that's saying something.
And here's the thing. He's not even in the jumbo tackle eligible package. So it's not even like a guy that's been landed young over the last couple of weeks. So even when they go heavy, he hasn't been the guy they've turned to. So, I mean, you can't help but be disappointed in those guys because, honestly, there's only so few people like that walking the face of the earth. That kind of size, that kind of athleticism. So, the Saints invest heavily in it. So, for Penning, Peyton Turner, both those guys, it just hasn't worked out. And that's unfortunate, and it's, frankly, disappointing.
Very. And then our last category here, Best rookie.
This is a hard one because I don't really. Has there been a rookie that's really stepped up and shined? I mean, it had moments. I'm going to go with Brian Brzee. I didn't realize this. He has 5 batted passes, a sack and a half. Has some moments with getting behind the line of scrimmage, tackle for loss. Still struggles at the point of attack when it comes to gap runs. But when he's on the field during a run play and it's a zone scheme, he's able to kind of knife through and make plays in the backfield. I like his development. I like where he's at. He's been, knock on wood, mostly healthy. He's a guy that's been a solid rotational piece. And you talk about this rookie class, Falsky's had a hard time getting on the field. Kendre Miller's had his moments, but once again, he's been injured. Hayner is not even active. Saldiveri is hardly ever active. Who am I missing? A.T. Perry had a nice game, but I mean, that's only one. Jordan Howden has had some moments. So, to me, it's Brian Brzee. He's been on the field the most, and he's had the most production.
I figured you were going to go Brzee, and I did kind of want to go Howden just because the draft position he was selected. He was a 5th-round pick. Yeah. Didn't really know if he was going to see much time on the field, but he saw some snaps in the dime formation. He's been a very versatile safety. You know how the Saints love to use those versatile defensive backs, and so him getting on the field, he's got, I think, 3 or 4 passes defense this season.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, he's seeing a lot of action. He's being used in certain formations, so I think he's, for me, the best rookie so far this season.
Yeah, I mean that's not crazy to assume, which made it all the more confusing when that touchdown throw to T.J. Hawkinson. They were in that dime grouping. He's been the dime safety. He was off the field.
Yeah, he was.
It was Lonnie Johnson, and Lonnie Johnson's way too far down the field depth at the deep half position allowed Dobbs to throw that ball. So. I'm with you. I think Jordan Howden's been a nice, pleasant surprise. He's been a nice, solid addition. He's been a contributor so far as a rookie.
All right, and so that is all of our awards for this season. A couple of those you don't want to be awarded.
Right, exactly.
So, Sean, any final thoughts as we head into this bye week? I know we're not going to talk to these nice folks on YouTube and audio.
Programming note, we are not going to be here on Friday. We'll be back next Tuesday. After the bye week. So instead of our normal Monday routine, we're going to do the Tuesday and then Wednesday routine next week. So no podcast on Friday or Monday. So if you're looking for us, that's going to be where we are going to be. That's when you can find us next. Outside of that, enjoy your weekend. Enjoy the NFL without having to worry about the Saints outcome. Enjoy LSU. Enjoy Tulane. And let's see what happens on the back end of this bye week or the back end of the Saints schedule, because there's still football left, and as much as it's been frustrating at times, they still got a chance. So all you can do is play it out.
No loss coming this weekend, though, that's for sure. For Sean Fazende, I'm Vasilios. This has been the Fox 8 Overtime Podcast. We'll catch you guys next time.